The standard clinical impasse looks exactly like this. Two people trapped in an intractable, repeating conflict loop, often triggered by a tone of voice or a seemingly minor event. Highly intelligent clients will arrive at a session and construct elaborate, entirely rational narratives detailing their partner's flaws. They can articulate exactly what the other person is doing wrong, yet they remain incorrect about the root cause of their conflict. This table shows the dysregulation spiral, where a minor trigger escalates into relational gridlock. Clinicians often apply cognitive therapies here, targeting the rational mind during high alarm. However, this dysregulation actually emerges from a collision of incomplete biological survival responses and reorganized perception. Addressing the somatic architecture of trauma requires looking beneath the client's cognitive narratives. We must shift the clinical focus away from the memories of what happened in the client's past and examine exactly how their nervous systems are operating in the present moment. Bessel van der Kolk's research highlights how trauma rewires the architecture of the brain's perceptual management system. Simultaneously, biophysicist Peter Levine defined trauma as an interrupted biological cycle of survival energy. Together, these mechanisms form a trauma layer operating completely invisibly beneath the client's conscious awareness. Until the practitioner decodes the physiological and perceptual mechanisms at play, any logical intervention will merely bounce off the client's cognitive defenses. This diagram highlights stage 1, the spark. This represents the tone, the word, or the silence that initiates the conflict. The clinical question is why a client's nervous system reacts to this minor spark with a massive, life-threatening level of alarm. We find the biological answer in van der Kolk's early clinical work with Vietnam veterans. Van der Kolk gave the Rorschach test to traumatized veterans to evaluate their processing of neutral data. 16 saw a wartime atrocity. 5 went completely blank. Neither response reflects reality. Both show a loss of present-moment mental flexibility. Trauma alters the neural pathways so that incoming, present-moment sensory data is pre-interpreted as a threat. The past completely replaces the present before the rational brain can even execute a conscious evaluation. During the spark, the client is not overreacting to their partner. Their nervous system is accurately reacting to a historical threat template that has been superimposed over their partner's face. This table now highlights stage 2, the surge. This stage is characterized by increased heart rate, physical tension, and intense physiological alarm. Traditional psychiatric models viewed trauma as an irreversible brain disease. Peter Levine provides a somatic alternative. Levine's core mechanism states that post-traumatic symptoms are fundamentally incomplete physiological responses suspended in fear. It is a state of biological gridlock. The biological survival sequence: a threat is perceived, massive energy mobilizes, and if action is impossible, the organism freezes. The human failure point occurs here. Social and physical constraints interrupt the natural trembling phase. The kinetic survival energy remains locked in permanent high activation. Because the physical discharge never finished, the nervous system never marked the original traumatic event as over. Levine uses the metaphor of a bird crashing into a window. The bird falls into shock, immobilized and frozen. If allowed to tremble and reorient without interruption, it discharges the frozen energy and flies away untraumatized. Therefore, this surge is not a dramatic overreaction. It is the body desperately attempting to complete an unfinished biological survival sequence from the past. Returning to our table, we reach stage 4, the spiral, where both clients escalate or withdraw, hitting their nervous system ceiling simultaneously. The BSM Seeker-Bunker dynamic defines these behaviors as opposing suspended survival strategies. The seeker's pursuing behavior is a frozen flight toward connection, an incomplete alarm signaling a threat to their attachment. The bunker's withdrawing behavior is a frozen freeze away from connection, an incomplete alarm signaling the threat of engulfment. This creates absolute clinical gridlock. Two simultaneous incomplete response loops are firing, each demanding a different somatic completion. Integrating van der Kolk's theory, we see why co-regulation is impossible here. Both individuals are perceiving the other's survival strategy purely through their own trauma template. The seeker perceives the bunker's need for space as a literal threat of abandonment. The bunker perceives the seeker's pursuit as a literal threat of engulfment. Language alone cannot bridge the gap when both clients are trapped in separate biological pasts, functionally unable to see the present reality of the other person. This is why Stage 3, the story, the narrative clients build to explain their anger, is a clinical trap. The traumatized perception system operates outside the reach of intellectual insight. Kolk provides the therapeutic imperative. For real change to occur, the body, not the intellect, must receive visceral evidence that the danger has passed. This diagram outlines the sanctuary sequence. It is the somatic container designed to provide exactly this visceral evidence. Recognize is the somatic interruption of the automated perceptual template. It secures a microsecond of present moment data before the past can hijack the nervous system. Regulate establishes Levine's required conditions of quietness and safety. This allows the kinetic energy of the incomplete response to finally discharge. Relate executes the somatic co-regulation loop that restores relational imagination, anchoring both clients in the present. Facilitating the safe completion of suspended physiological responses addresses the somatic root of the conflict. Relational healing only begins when the nervous system stops fighting ghosts from the past, discharges its trapped energy, and safely lands in the reality of the present.